Michael Chen stared at his reflection in the dusty window of his small apartment. 5 years ago, he had been just another struggling programmer with big dreams. Today, at the age of 30, he was worth millions, but his mind often wandered back to the person who had believed in him when no one else did. Back in 2018, Michael lived in a tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of San Francisco. The rent was cheap, but the place was barely big enough for his desk and a mattress on the floor. Every morning, he would wake up at 5 a.m. to work on his software idea before heading to his day job as an IT support technician. It was during one of his late-night shifts at the 24-hour tech support center that he met Sarah Williams. She worked as a waitress at the diner across the street, where he would often grab coffee during his breaks. Sarah always had a warm smile and would sometimes slip him an extra cookie with his order. "You look exhausted," she said one night, sliding into the booth across from him during her break. "I see you here almost every night, typing away on that laptop." Michael found himself opening up to her about his dream of creating a revolutionary cybersecurity software. To his surprise, Sarah didn't laugh or dismiss his ideas like others had. Instead, she listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed genuine interest. Their relationship blossomed naturally. Sarah would bring him coffee during her shifts, and he would walk her home after work. Despite her own exhausting schedule of working two jobs, waitressing during the day and bartending at night, she always made time to support Michael's dreams. "You're going to make it big one day," she would tell him, massaging his shoulders as he worked late into the night. "I can feel it." Sarah's faith in him never wavered, even when Michael's savings dwindled to almost nothing. When he couldn't afford his apartment anymore, she offered to share her small one-bedroom place. She picked up extra shifts to help with the bills, while he devoted every spare moment to developing his software. The breakthrough came during their second year together. A major tech company experienced a devastating cyber attack, and Michael's innovative security solution caught the attention of several venture capitalists. Within months, he secured his first round of funding, $2 million to develop and launch his software. Success came faster than anyone expected. Michael's company, Secure Flow, grew rapidly. His security software was exactly what many businesses needed, and within 18 months, major corporations were lining up to buy it. The small startup expanded to 50 employees, then 100, then 200. Money started pouring in. Michael moved the company to a sleek office building in downtown San Francisco. He traded his worn-out t-shirts for custom suits and his old laptop for the latest technology. Forbes magazine featured him in their 30 under 30 list, calling him a cybersecurity wonderkind. But with success came changes. Michael spent increasingly long hours at the office. Board meetings, investor presentations, and business trips consumed his life. Sarah, still working her waitressing job despite Michael's success, saw less and less of him. "I miss you," she would say during their rare dinners together. "You're here, but you're not really here anymore." Michael was too caught up in his rising success to notice the growing distance between them. When Sarah tried to talk about their relationship, he would brush her concerns aside with promises of future vacations and better times ahead. One day, he surprised her by taking her to view a luxury penthouse apartment. "We can finally move out of this small place," he said excitedly, gesturing at the panoramic city views. "This is what we've been working for." But Sarah just stood quietly by the floor-to-ceiling windows, tears in her eyes. "This isn't what I've been working for, Michael. I never wanted all this. I just wanted you." That was the moment when Michael should have realized something was wrong. Instead, he chopped it up to Sarah being tired from her long shifts at the diner. He couldn't understand why she still insisted on working when he could easily support them both. What Michael didn't see was how much he had changed. The humble, hard-working programmer who had captured Sarah's heart was disappearing behind the facade of a successful tech entrepreneur. His old friends couldn't relate to him anymore, and his family complained that he never had time for them. By the end of that year, Michael's net worth had reached $50 million. Secure Flow was valued at over $200 million, and everyone wanted a piece of his success. He had everything he had ever dreamed of, except for the one person who had believed in him from the start. Little did he know that his world was about to turn upside down in ways he never could have imagined. The final argument happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. Sarah had been waiting at home for 3 hours, a special dinner growing cold on the table. It was their third anniversary, but Michael had forgotten completely, caught up in an important business meeting. When he finally walked through the door at 10 p.m., his phone still glued to his ear discussing profit margins, Sarah was sitting alone in the dark living room. The candles she had lit had long since burned out. "I'll call you back tomorrow," Michael said into his phone, finally noticing the elaborate dinner setup. His heart sank as he remembered the date. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. The meeting ran late, and—" "Save it," Sarah interrupted, her voice tired rather than angry. "This isn't about dinner, Michael. This is about us. About what we've become." The past few months had been filled with similar moments: missed dates, forgotten promises, and endless business calls. Sarah had watched the man she loved slowly transform into someone she barely recognized. The simple joy they once shared over late-night coffee and dreams had been replaced by expensive gifts and empty apologies. "I can make it up to you," Michael said, reaching for his wallet. "Let's go away this weekend. Anywhere you want. Paris, Rome, Tokyo?" Sarah shook her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You still don't get it, do you? I don't want your money or fancy trips. I want the Michael I fell in love with. The one who used to talk to me about his dreams, who noticed when I was sad, who actually saw me." Michael ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Everything I'm doing is for us. The long hours, the meetings, it's all to build a better future. Why can't you understand that? A better future?" Sarah stood up, her hands shaking. "I haven't seen you properly in weeks. You've missed every dinner I've planned. You don't even know that I've been sick every morning for the past week." Michael's phone buzzed again, and his eyes flickered to it instinctively. That small gesture was the final straw for Sarah. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, walking to their bedroom. Michael followed her, watching in confusion as she pulled out a small suitcase. "What are you doing?" he asked, panic finally creeping into his voice. "I'm leaving," Sarah replied, throwing some clothes into the suitcase. "I've already found a small apartment across town. I've been thinking about this for weeks." "You can't just leave," Michael protested. "We can fix this. I'll cut back on work. It's too late," Sarah interrupted. "The man I loved disappeared somewhere between your first million and your latest business deal. I don't even know who you are anymore." As she packed, Michael noticed how pale she looked, how tired. Had she lost weight? When was the last time he had really looked at her? A wave of guilt washed over him, but his pride wouldn't let him admit how badly he had failed her. "If you walk out that door," he said, his voice hardening, "don't expect to come back." Sarah paused at the doorway, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. A gesture Michael was too preoccupied to notice. For a moment, she seemed about to say something important, but his cold expression stopped her. "Goodbye, Michael," she said softly, closing the door behind her. Michael stood in the empty apartment, telling himself she would come back. She always did, but days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. He threw himself even deeper into his work, refusing to acknowledge the growing emptiness in his life. He hired people to pack up her remaining things and send them to her new address. He deleted her number from his phone, removed their photos from social media, and tried to erase every trace of their life together. What Michael didn't know was that Sarah had been carrying a secret when she left that night. As she sat in her small new apartment, holding a positive pregnancy test, she made the difficult decision to face the future alone. The Michael she had loved would have been overjoyed at the news of becoming a father. But this new Michael, consumed by wealth and success, was not the man she wanted to raise a child with. As autumn turned to winter, both their lives took very different paths. Michael's company continued to soar, while Sarah quietly prepared for single motherhood, working extra shifts to save money for the baby. Neither of them could have predicted how their paths would cross again in the most unexpected way possible. 2 years had passed since Sarah walked out of Michael's life. His company, Secure Flow, had grown into a billion-dollar enterprise, and he had everything money could buy, except happiness. That changed the day he met Jessica Zhang at a tech conference in Silicon Valley. Jessica wasn't like the other women who had tried to catch his attention since Sarah. As the CEO of her own successful AI company, she understood the demands of running a business. She was brilliant, driven, and most importantly, she made Michael laugh again. "You know," Jessica said during their first dinner date, "you have the saddest eyes I've ever seen on a successful man." Her honesty caught him off guard. For the first time in 2 years, Michael found himself opening up about Sarah. Jessica listened without judgment, offering a perspective he hadn't considered before. Sometimes we lose people not because we stop loving them, she said, but because we forget to show it while chasing our dreams. Their relationship progressed quickly. Jessica's strength and independence complemented Michael's drive and ambition. She didn't need his money or attention to validate herself, which made him want to give her both. Within 8 months, they were engaged. "Let me plan the wedding," Jessica said one evening as they sat in his penthouse overlooking the city. "You focus on the company merger, and I'll handle everything else." Michael agreed, grateful for her understanding of his busy schedule. Jessica threw herself into the wedding preparations with the same efficiency she brought to her business dealings. She chose the prestigious Ocean Cliff Resort for their venue, hired the city's top wedding planner, and selected everything from the flowers to the music. "There's just one thing left," Jessica said, showing him the catering options. "We need to choose between these 3 companies." Michael glanced at the proposals without much interest. "Whatever you think is best, honey. You have better taste than I do." Jessica selected Elite Catering Services, known for their exceptional food and professional staff. Everything was falling into place perfectly. The week before the wedding, Michael sat in his office late at night, staring at an old photo he kept hidden in his desk drawer. It showed him and Sarah at their favorite diner, both laughing at some forgotten joke. He looked happy, younger somehow, despite having far less money then. His assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts through the intercom. "Mr. Chen, the final guest list needs your approval." Michael quickly put the photo away. His past with Sarah felt like a different lifetime now. He had moved on, found success, and was about to marry a wonderful woman who understood him. Yet something felt incomplete, a nagging feeling he couldn't shake. The wedding preparations continued at full speed. 500 guests would attend, including tech industry leaders, politicians, and celebrities. The media was already calling it the wedding of the year. "Are you happy?" Jessica asked him the night before their rehearsal dinner. They were walking along the beach near their wedding venue, the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Michael pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Of course I am." "Why you ask?" Jessica shrugged. "Sometimes you seem far away, like you're looking for something you've lost." "I have everything I need right here," Michael assured her, pushing away thoughts of Sarah that still occasionally crept into his mind. The rehearsal dinner went perfectly. The Ocean Cliff Resort looked magnificent, decorated with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers. The catering staff moved efficiently through the crowd, serving champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "The wedding planner wants to go through the final schedule," Jessica said, squeezing his hand. "I'll be right back." Michael nodded, watching his fiancée walk away. She looked stunning in her designer dress, turning heads as she moved through the crowd. He should have felt like the luckiest man in the world. Instead, he found himself thinking about simpler times, when happiness meant sharing a cup of coffee with someone who believed in his dreams. He shook off the thought and reached for a glass of champagne from a passing server's tray. That's when he saw her. The champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. There, in a black and white server's uniform, was Sarah. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, her face more mature. But what really caught his attention was her clearly visible pregnant belly. The world seemed to stop spinning as their eyes met across the crowded room. Neither of them could have predicted this moment, or the chaos that would follow. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. The elegant music, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation. Everything faded into background noise as Michael stared at Sarah. She was still beautiful, but her face had grown thinner, and dark circles under her eyes suggested long hours of hard work. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the serving tray, and her server's uniform stretched tight across her pregnant belly. Sarah recovered first, quickly turning away to disappear into the kitchen. Michael stood rooted to the spot, his expensive shoes crunching on the broken glass at his feet. "Sir, let me clean that up." A server rushed forward with a broom, but Michael barely heard him. His mind was racing. Sarah was here, at his wedding, serving drinks. And she was pregnant, very pregnant. 1,000 questions flooded his thoughts, but one stood out above the rest. What had happened to their child, the one he never knew about? "Michael," Jessica's voice snapped him back to reality. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I need some air," he mumbled, loosening his bow tie as he hurried toward the terrace. The cool evening breeze did little to clear his head. He leaned against the stone railing, trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. Through the glass doors, he could see the reception continuing as if nothing had changed, but for him, everything had shifted. A quiet voice behind him made him jump. "I didn't know it was your wedding." Michael turned to find Sarah standing there, her hands clasped protectively over her stomach. Up close, he could see the weariness in her face, the strain of standing on her feet all day. "Why are you working as a server?" He blurted out. You're pregnant." A bitter smile crossed Sarah's face. "Bills don't pay themselves, Michael. And this isn't my first pregnancy." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" "I was pregnant when I left you," Sarah said quietly. "I have a son now. He's almost 2. Michael gripped the railing to steady himself. A son. He had a son. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. "Would it have mattered?" Sarah asked. "You were so consumed by your success, you couldn't even see what was right in front of you. I tried to tell you that night, but you were too busy threatening me not to come back." Before Michael could respond, another server appeared at the door. "Sarah, they need help in Section 3. "I have to go," Sarah said, turning away. "Congratulations on your wedding." "Wait." Michael reached for her arm but stopped himself. "We need to talk about this. About our son." "Mr. Chen." The wedding planner's voice carried from inside. "We need you for the toast rehearsal." Sarah took advantage of the interruption to slip away, leaving Michael torn between his past and present. Through the windows, he could see Jessica chatting with guests, radiant in her designer dress. She caught his eye and smiled, waving him to come inside. But Michael couldn't move. His son was out there somewhere, growing up without him. The child had probably taken his first steps, said his first words, and Michael had missed it all. And now Sarah was pregnant again, working a demanding job when she should be resting. The weight of his choices crashed down on him. He had everything money could buy, was about to marry a successful and beautiful woman. But in this moment, he felt like the poorest man in the world. "Mr. Chen," the wedding planner appeared beside him. "Everyone's waiting." "Tell them." Michael paused, watching Sarah move efficiently between tables, serving drinks with one hand while the other rested protectively on her belly. "Tell them I'll be there in a minute." But he knew he had a decision to make. He couldn't just walk away from this revelation. His son was out there, and Sarah was struggling while he lived in luxury. The carefully planned wedding, his perfect new life with Jessica, everything had just become complicated in ways he never expected. As he watched Sarah work, a memory flashed through his mind. Her voice from years ago, saying, "I can feel it," when he shared his dreams of success. She had believed in him when he had nothing. And how had he repaid that faith? The answer made him sick to his stomach. Michael couldn't focus during the rest of the rehearsal dinner. His eyes kept following Sarah as she moved through the crowd, efficiently serving drinks while trying to avoid his gaze. He barely heard the toasts and speeches, his mind consumed with thoughts of the son he never knew he had. During a quiet moment, he pulled his phone out and did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He searched for Sarah on social media. Her profile was private, but one public photo made his heart stop. It showed Sarah holding a small boy with familiar eyes, his eyes. Looking up the catering staff. Jessica's voice made him jump. She peered over his shoulder at the phone screen, and her expression changed. "Michael, who is that?" He couldn't lie to her. "Not about this. That's Sarah," he said quietly. "My ex-girlfriend. She's one of the servers tonight." Jessica's face softened with understanding. "The one you told me about, but she's pregnant in this photo." "Not in this photo," Michael corrected, his voice thick with emotion. That's my son." The champagne glass in Jessica's hand trembled slightly. "You're what?" Before he could respond, the wedding planner called Jessica away to discuss some last-minute details. Michael used the opportunity to slip away from the crowd. He found himself in a quiet hallway near the kitchen, where he overheard 2 servers talking. "Poor Sarah," one said. "Working until 8 months pregnant, and little Tommy's babysitter keeps raising her rates." "Tommy?" Michael whispered to himself. His son had a name. He waited until Sarah emerged from the kitchen, then gently called her name. She looked exhausted, one hand supporting her back as she carried an empty tray. "Please," he said softly. 5 minutes. I need to know about Tommy. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. They found a quiet corner in the hotel's garden. He's beautiful, Sarah said, pulling out her phone to show him more pictures. Smart, too. Already knows his ABCs. He has your smile. Michael's vision blurred as he looked at photos of a laughing toddler playing in a park, opening Christmas presents, blowing out birthday candles, all the moments he had missed. Why didn't you tell me? He asked again, his voice breaking. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. The night I left, I tried to tell you, but you were so cold, so different from the man I fell in love with. I thought my baby would be better off without a father who cared more about business deals than family. And now, Michael gestured to her pregnant belly. Are you with someone? Sarah shook her head. No, this pregnancy was unexpected. The father was a brief relationship that didn't work out. He's not in the picture. Michael ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Sarah remembered from their past. How are you managing? Financially? We get by, Sarah said proudly. I work 2 jobs. Tommy goes to a cheap daycare while I work. It's not easy. But... Not easy? Michael interrupted. You're 8 months pregnant, working as a server at your ex's wedding. This is insane, Sarah. Why didn't you at least ask for child support? Because I didn't want your money. Sarah snapped. I wanted the old Michael, the one who would have been thrilled to be a father. The one who would have chosen midnight feedings and first steps over board meetings and business dinners. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. She was right. The old Michael would have been there for every moment. Mr. Chen? A voice called from the building. Miss Zhang is looking for you. Reality crashed back in. Jessica. The wedding. His perfectly planned future was unraveling by the minute. I have to get back to work, Sarah said, struggling to stand up with her pregnant belly. Michael automatically reached out to help her, and for a moment, they were close enough that he could smell her familiar vanilla perfume. We're not done talking about this, he said firmly. I want to meet my son. I want to help. You're getting married tomorrow, Sarah reminded him gently. I know, Michael replied, but uncertainty crept into his voice. I need time to think. As he watched Sarah walk away, Michael knew he had an impossible choice to make. His perfect new life with Jessica beckoned from one direction, while the pull of his son, and if he was honest with himself, his unresolved feelings for Sarah, called from another. And time was running out. Michael barely slept that night. He paced his luxurious hotel suite, his bow tie undone, wedding preparations forgotten. On his phone screen was a photo of Tommy, his son, grinning at the camera with chocolate ice cream smeared across his face. The boy had his eyes and Sarah's smile. At 3 a.m., a soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Jessica stood at the door in her silk robe, her face showing she hadn't slept either. I thought I'd find you awake, she said, entering the room. We need to talk about what happened tonight. Michael nodded, sinking into an armchair. I don't know what to do, Jessica. Yes, you do, she said quietly, surprising him. You just don't want to admit it because you're worried about hurting me. She sat across from him, her eyes gentle but firm. I saw how you looked at her, Michael. Not just because of the shock about your son, but because there are still feelings there. Jess, Michael started, but she held up her hand. Let me finish. When he told me about Sarah 2 years ago, I thought it was just another relationship that didn't work out. But now I understand. She was there when you were nobody. She believed in you before the money, before the success. Tears formed in Jessica's eyes, but her voice remained steady. And now she's struggling, carrying another child, while working as a server at what was supposed to be your wedding to another woman. Yet she never asked you for money or tried to use your son to get to you. That says a lot about her character. Michael stared at his hands. I messed up so badly, Jess. I have a son I've never met. He's been living just across town, probably wondering why he doesn't have a dad like other kids. Then fix it, Jessica said simply. What about us? The wedding? 500 guests are arriving tomorrow. The press will be here. Your family flew in from Shanghai. Jessica stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the moonlit ocean. Michael, if we get married tomorrow, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering about your son. You'll resent me for being the reason you couldn't be there for him. And I'll always know that part of your heart belongs to the woman who loved you before you were worthy of love. You're an amazing woman, Jessica, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. She turned to him with a sad smile. I know. And I deserve someone whose whole heart belongs to me. Just like you deserve a chance to make things right with your family. But the scandal. I'll handle it, Jessica said firmly. I'm good at handling things, remember? We'll tell everyone you're sick. Food poisoning. Very unfortunate, but these things happen. In a week, people will be gossiping about something else. Michael stood and hugged her tightly. I don't deserve your kindness. No, you don't, she agreed with a small laugh. But Sarah did something kind for you once, believing in you when you were nothing. I'm just paying it forward. As Jessica turned to leave, she paused at the door. Michael, don't mess it up this time. That little boy needs his father and Sarah. She needs the man she fell in love with, not the millionaire you became. After she left, Michael sat down and wrote 2 letters. The first was to his board of directors, informing them he would be taking a leave of absence to handle personal matters. The second was to Sarah. Dear Sarah, he wrote, I know I don't deserve another chance, but our son does deserve a father. I can't change the past 2 years, but I can be there for his future, and for his sibling, if you'll let me help. I'm not asking for anything except the opportunity to prove that the man you once believed in still exists. As dawn broke over the ocean, Michael made several phone calls, to his assistant to cancel the wedding, to his lawyer to set up a trust fund for Tommy, and finally, to a real estate agent about a modest house he'd seen for sale near Tommy's daycare. The old Michael would have thrown money at the problem, trying to fix everything with his wealth. But this Michael understood that some things were more precious than money. He had a lot to prove, not just to Sarah and Tommy, but to himself. As he watched the sunrise, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not the ambitious hope of making millions, but the simple hope of hearing his son call him Dad for the first time. The small playground was quiet on Tuesday morning, except for the sound of children's laughter. Michael sat nervously on a bench, watching the daycare's entrance. After a week of respectful distance and exchanged messages, Sarah had finally agreed to let him meet Tommy. His Armani suit felt out of place among the colorful slides and swings. He had dressed formally out of habit, then realized too late that it might make him seem unapproachable to a toddler. But it was too late to change now. Sarah appeared at the daycare door, holding the hand of a small boy in dinosaur-printed overalls. Michael's heart stopped. Tommy looked even more like him in person than in the photos. Tommy, Sarah said gently, kneeling despite her pregnant belly, remember I told you about the special friend who wanted to meet you? That's him over there. The little boy looked at Michael with curious eyes, half hiding behind Sarah's leg. Michael's throat tightened with emotion as he noticed Tommy was clutching a toy dinosaur, just like the one he himself had loved as a child. Hi, Tommy, Michael said softly, dropping to one knee to be at the boy's level. I like your dinosaur. Is that a T-Rex? Tommy's eyes lit up. Yes, he's the king of all dinosaurs. The boy made a roaring sound, temporarily forgetting his shyness. You know what? Michael reached into his briefcase and pulled out an old, worn toy dinosaur. I had one just like that when I was your age. Tommy stepped forward, fascinated. Really? Can I see it? The ice was broken. Soon, Tommy was sitting between Michael and Sarah on the bench, comparing the 2 dinosaurs and making them fight playful battles. Michael noticed Sarah watching them with tears in her eyes. Mommy, why are you crying? Tommy asked, concerned. Because I'm happy, sweetheart. Sarah smiled, wiping her eyes. And because your little sister is kicking. Can I feel? Michael asked hesitantly. After a moment's pause, Sarah nodded and guided his hand to her belly. The strong kick made them both laugh, remembering simpler times. Tommy, Sarah said carefully, remember how you asked me why other kids have daddies? Well, Michael is your daddy. Tommy looked between them, his young mind processing this information. Really? But where were you before? The innocent question hit Michael hard. I was lost, he said finally. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. But I'm here now, and I want to be the best daddy I can be, if you'll let me. Tommy considered this seriously, then held out his toy dinosaur. Do you want to play with T-Rex? Michael swallowed the lump in his throat. I'd love to. They spent the morning at the playground, with Tommy teaching Michael all about his favorite games. Sarah watched them climb the jungle gym together, Michael's expensive suit getting covered in sand and dirt, but he didn't seem to care. During Tommy's nap time at daycare, Michael and Sarah sat in a nearby cafe, talking honestly for the first time in years. I bought a house, Michael said. Nothing fancy, but it's near here. I want to be close to Tommy, to be there for school runs and bedtime stories. And he hesitated. I want to help with the new baby too, even though she's not yours. Sarah finished. Michael, what exactly are you hoping for here? A chance, he said simply. Not just to be Tommy's father, but to show you that I've changed. The company, the money. None of it means anything compared to seeing our son smile. I was lost in success, but Tommy brought me back to what really matters. Sarah touched her belly thoughtfully. It won't be easy. Tommy will have questions. There will be complicated moments with the new baby. I know, Michael nodded, but I'm ready for complicated. I'm ready for real life again, instead of just board meetings and business deals. As if to emphasize his point, his phone buzzed with a work call. For the first time in years, Michael Chen, tech millionaire, hit decline without hesitation. Sarah noticed and smiled slightly. Maybe you have changed. I'm trying, he said honestly. One dinosaur battle at a time. They walked back to the daycare together, planning Tommy's next visit. It wasn't perfect, and there were still many challenges ahead, but it was a start. Sometimes Michael realized the biggest success stories aren't about making millions. They're about finding your way back home. 1 year had passed since that day at the playground. The modest house Michael bought near Tommy's school had become a warm home filled with children's laughter and dinosaur toys. On this sunny Sunday morning, the backyard was decorated with balloons and streamers for Tommy's 3rd birthday party. Michael flipped burgers on the grill while watching Tommy chase his 8-month-old half-sister, Lucy, who was crawling faster than anyone expected. Sarah sat in a comfortable chair nearby, smiling as she watched them play. Daddy, Lucy's trying to eat my dinosaur again. Tommy called out, rescuing his beloved T-Rex from his sister's determined grasp. The word daddy still made Michael's heart skip a beat. It had taken time, patience, and many dinosaur battles, but Tommy now ran to him with open arms whenever he saw him. The transition hadn't been perfect. There were tears, tantrums, and confused questions about why Daddy hadn't been there before, but they worked through each challenge together. Jessica had kept her word about handling the cancelled wedding gracefully. She'd even sent Tommy a birthday card, showing the kind of class that had made Michael care for her in the first place. She was now engaged to a doctor who looked at her the way Michael looked at Sarah. The corporate world had been less understanding of Michael's transformation. His board of directors struggled to accept their CEO's new priority of leaving work at 5 p.m. for family dinners. Some investors questioned his commitment when he missed meetings for Tommy's doctor appointments or Lucy's checkups. But Michael had learned to balance both worlds. He ran his company from a home office 3 days a week, hired capable managers to handle daily operations, and made it clear that family came first. SecureFlow's profits had actually increased, proving that a happy CEO could be a more effective leader. The cake's ready. Sarah called from the kitchen. As she brought out the dinosaur-shaped birthday cake, Michael watched her with growing affection. They weren't officially back together. Both agreed to focus on co-parenting first, but something was slowly rekindling between them. Tommy blew out his candles while everyone sang. The small gathering included Sarah's parents, who had initially been skeptical of Michael's return, but warmed up after seeing his genuine efforts to be a good father. Even Michael's parents were there, delighting in their grandchildren after years of wondering if their workaholic son would ever have a family. "What did you wish for, buddy?" Michael asked as he cut the cake. "Can't tell you, Daddy. It won't come true." Tommy giggled, his face already covered in chocolate frosting. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Michael and Sarah sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset. "Remember that night at the wedding?" Sarah asked softly. "When you saw me serving drinks?" Michael nodded. "I thought my world was ending. Instead, it was just beginning." "You really have changed," Sarah observed, touching his hand gently. The old Michael would have thrown money at the situation and gone back to his meetings. The old Michael was an idiot, he smiled. He had everything that money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the baby monitor's soft sounds of Lucy's peaceful breathing. Through the window, they could see Tommy's nightlight casting dinosaur shadows on his bedroom wall. "I've been thinking," Sarah said hesitantly. "Maybe it's time we tried having dinner together. Just the two of us." Michael's heart raced, but he kept his voice calm. "Are you sure?" "We're not the same people we were 2 years ago," she said. "You're not that ambitious businessman who forgot how to love, and I'm not that waitress afraid to stand up for herself." We both groaned. Michael squeezed her hand gently. "Whatever happens between us, Tommy and Lucy come first." "Agreed," Sarah smiled. "But maybe there's room for us to find our way back to each other, too." As if on cue, Tommy's voice called from upstairs. "Daddy, Mommy, one more story, please." They looked at each other and laughed. "Your turn," Sarah said. Michael stood up, helping Sarah to her feet. Together, they walked upstairs to their son's room, where Tommy waited with his favorite dinosaur book. As Michael began reading, with Sarah and Tommy cuddled on either side of him, he realized that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or company valuations. It was measured in moments like these, where love, forgiveness, and second chances created the kind of happiness that no amount of money could buy. The end.